When a giant amphibian starts terrorizing the town's residents, a group of detectives and their dog decide to investigate the monster's origins and set out on a mission to discover how to break the curse that brought the creature to life. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Scooby-Doo, Curse of the Lake Monster, from 2010. It's the last day of school before the summer break and Shaggy watches the clock intently as he waits for the bell to ring. When it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all the students are celebrating the end of school and Shaggy and Scooby can't wait to enjoy their first day of vacation. However, the dream comes to an end when Velma appears and reveals that their summer job will start that afternoon, as the group needs money to pay for the damage done to Mr. Frickert's barn. Daphne's uncle has just opened a new club in the neighboring town and the girl has found a job for her and her friends with him. Arriving at the van called the Mystery Machine, the trio find Fred and Daphne kissing and Velma demands an explanation. The group is on their way to the club when the couple explains when their relationship began. A few nights ago, the teen was following the tracks of the avenging clown to Mr. Frickert's barn and suddenly the monster came out of the hayloft. At that moment, Daphne was startled and fell out of the window, but Fred, who was outside, managed to catch her in his arms and save her from a big fall. Then a fire broke out and the young people had to flee, but they owed the old man a new barn. After hearing this story, Velma expresses her concern, as she is afraid that a possible breakup between the couple will damage the friendship of the whole group. On the way to the club, the 5 friends decide to stop at a store and meet Mrs. Trauberg. The scary old lady reveals that she tried to stop the country club from being built, but was completely ignored. She then advises the young people not to go and work there, because the lake monster will be back soon. Terrified by the old woman's words, Shaggy runs out of the store and says he's going home. However, Velma tries to calm him down and tells him that this is just a legend created to attract new tourists. A few minutes later, they arrive at the country club and Daphne thanks her Uncle Thorny for the opportunity to work there. After introducing her friends, the young woman accompanies them to the staff room and Shaggy falls off the roof of the van while trying to get his suitcase out. Velma immediately holds her friend in her arms and Shaggy falls in love with her, but then falls to the ground. Arriving in the bedroom, the young man tells Scooby what has just happened and asks if he and Velma have any chance of getting together. At that moment, the dog starts laughing and Shaggy leaves, as he feels ridiculed by Scooby. So the young man goes to talk to his other friend and discovers that Fred and Daphne are not in a serious relationship. But for Daphne, what they have is already a relationship and she talks to Velma about their perfect relationship. While the rest of the team are working, Scooby is sunbathing by the pool. At the end of the long working day, Fred and Daphne decide to go for a swim while Shaggy and Velma go for a walk on the beach. The pair are followed by Scooby, who uses a device to detect gold hidden in the sand. Suddenly, Velma finds a moonstone buried in the sand near the sea and is impressed by the beauty of the crystal. Staring at that blue glow, Velma starts to feel sick and decides to go to her room. During the evening, Thorny arranges a grand opening party for his club and invites Daphne and her friends to join in the celebration, but Velma doesn't show up for the event. Suddenly, a heavy fog invades the tent and the lights go out. Then the lake monster appears and all the guests flee the party. Thorny immediately orders the creature to leave, but ends up being attacked by it. Fred, Daphne and Shaggy are hiding under the table when the giant frog approaches and throws Fred away. Luckily, all the guests manage to get out of the attack alive and leave immediately. Just then, Velma appears and approaches her friends to ask what happened. Upon discovering that the lake monster has appeared at the party, the young woman and her team decide to start an investigation and go to interrogate Elmer Uggins, the person who took the only existing photo of the lake monster. The man lives in an old lighthouse on the edge of the ocean, but when Fred knocks on the door, no one answers. So the group decides to split up to look for clues and Shaggy soon offers to be Velma's double. While the two friends walk along the sandy beach, the couple go to the opposite side and look for Elmer among the bushes. During a conversation about their relationship, Fred and Daphne hear their friends screaming and run to meet them. At that moment, the youngsters come across a humanoid amphibian and are convinced that it is the monster from the lake. However, it's not long before Elmer's cover is blown and he removes his mask. The old man then invites them to his house and confesses that he has never seen the real lake monster. The truth is that Elmer was just using the famous legend to attract tourists in order to make money. When he heard about the attack on the club, the man thought it would be a good idea to put on his old costume to take some photos, but his plan didn't work out as expected. Despite being a charlatan, Elmer believes that the lake monster really exists and advises the young people to leave. Curious to know the origin of the legend, Fred asks when the giant toad first appeared and the old man decides to tell the story. According to him, it all started when the first settlers arrived there and were confronted by an old woman who claimed to live in a cave near the lake. The woman's name was Wanda Grubward, and she said that the whole lake shore belonged to her. That day, she said that if the settlers didn't leave, they would pay the price, but the men didn't take her seriously. Then, a few months after those guys arrived, Wanda decided to keep her promise and, using her magic staff, cast her curse on a toad that lived near the lake. The amphibian that had been transformed into a beast attacked the villagers on the old woman's orders, so Wanda was convicted of witchcraft and burned at the stake. That evening, after gathering all the information they needed, they returned to the club, and the next morning, over breakfast, Daphne spotted Fred playing golf with some girls. Furious, she begins to ignore the young man, but Fred doesn't realize that he's crossed the line. Suddenly, Velma appears and calls her friends to go and look at the club's security camera footage. After the attack, the lake monster met up with a hooded person, and, just as the youngsters were trying to find out the identity of the supposed witch, the computer started crashing. Velma accidentally dropped a glass of green tea on the device and ended up short-circuiting the hard disk. Frustrated by her mistake, the young woman decides to leave, and Shaggy tries to cheer her up, but Velma can't forgive herself for destroying the only clue that could help her team solve this mystery. At night, in his room, Shaggy enlists Scooby's help to practice his speech, in which he intends to declare his feelings for Velma. However, the dog isn't interested in hearing this drivel and calls his friend into the kitchen to prepare a snack. While Scooby is assembling his sandwich, Shaggy smells Velma's perfume and goes after her. At that moment, Fred is running around the club and gets jealous when he sees Daphne playing tennis with other guys. While walking along the sandy beach looking for Velma, Shaggy comes across the giant amphibian and has to flee. Hearing their friend's screams, Fred and Daphne go to find him and come face to face with the real lake monster. Immediately, Fred attacks him and manages to knock him down so that his friends can remove the imposter's mask. However, when she tries to remove the costume, Daphne realizes that the creature is a real monster and the trio must flee. During the escape, the youngsters end up getting separated and the frog decides to go after Shaggy. The young man is about to be devoured when Scooby appears on a quad bike to save him. Minutes later, the pair have an accident and fall into the sand. After recovering from the fall, Shaggy finds another moonstone and decides to take the crystal to Velma. After losing sight of his target, the giant frog goes after the couple and Fred manages to hit him with a golf club. Then he and Daphne hide and see the witch approaching. At that moment, the monster returns to the lake and the mysterious person also leaves. After the scare, Shaggy begins to wonder where Velma is, as he smelled her perfume on the beach before the monster appeared. Concerned for their friend's safety, the group decides to go out to look for her and finds the girl sleeping on a rock. The young woman says that the night before she couldn't sleep, so she went for a walk on the beach. Suddenly, she was surprised by a fog and ended up getting lost, but she doesn't remember exactly what happened after that. Looking at the girl's hands, her friends realize that her skin is covered in warts and Velma is terrified. However, she is convinced that it is just a skin problem caused by sun exposure and returns to the club with her friends. After breakfast, Shaggy gathers his courage and asks Velma out, but the girl turns him down because they are in the middle of an investigation. However, when she realizes that her friend is heartbroken, she decides to go out with him for dinner and the two agree to meet at 7 o'clock. That evening, while getting ready for the date, Shaggy realizes that Scooby intends to accompany him to dinner and says that the dog won't be able to go with him this time. Sad at having been abandoned, Scooby begins to wonder what his future will be like after Velma and Shaggy get married and is terrified at the thought of being replaced, so he decides to act before that happens. After meeting Velma in her room, Shaggy accompanies her to the restaurant and is impressed by his friend's beauty, having never seen her so dressed up before. When the two are sitting at the table, the young man takes a match to light the candle, but when she sees the flame, Velma is startled and falls off her chair. Immediately, Shaggy runs to help her and asks the waiter to get the girl a glass of water. Just then, the young man comes across Scooby-Doo waiting on the table and orders him to leave so as not to spoil his date. The dog then knocks over the couple's table and the moonstone that was in Shaggy's pocket falls to the floor. Seeing the blue crystal, Velma becomes obsessed and the young man reveals that he was planning to surprise her. After picking up the stone, the young woman says goodbye to Shaggy and tells him she has to go back to her room. Furious, the young man blames Scooby for ruining their date and the two start a fight. Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne go to the pier to continue their investigation and decide to get on a boat, as they believe that's where the witch lives. At that moment, the couple spots some footprints that lead to a trap door and they decide to go down to find out what's down there. They are so focused on the investigation that they don't even realize that the lake monster has just invaded the boat. On their way just below, Fred and Daphne find a room full of old newspapers and, after reading them, discover that Wanda Grubwert's staff was destroyed after her perishment. However, the magic stones that provided her with power could not be destroyed, so they were separated and buried. While the couple are trying to find out who the new person is who is controlling the lake monster, the giant toad appears and locks the door. He then opens the pipes so that the seawater can begin to enter the boat. Seeing that the boat is about to be flooded, the couple become desperate and start shouting for help. When he realizes that they are about to drown, Fred takes a sharp metal object and breaks the glass in the window. In this way, they both manage to escape. Minutes later, they meet Shaggy and tell him about the accident. At this point, Daphne talks about her suspicions that a descendant of Wanda's is controlling the lake monster, and Shaggy remembers that, if read backwards, the surname of the old woman they met on their way to the club is Grubwort. Immediately, the four friends go to the store owner's house in the hope of finding her and see the witch's shadow through the window. Together, they break into the house and surround the woman, who, on seeing them, quickly runs away with her staff. Just then, she runs up the stairs and hides inside one of the bedrooms. After a few minutes of chasing, the youngsters decide to split up to surround the witch and manage to capture her. After removing the hood, they discover the woman's true identity, and everyone is surprised to realize that Velma is the bearer of the staff. However, the girl is different, as if she has taken on a new personality. What's more, she's much stronger and more violent than usual, as if her body were being controlled by an entity. After knocking Fred down, the young woman attacks Shaggy and Scooby with her staff and then disappears. When the four friends recover from the attack, Mrs. Trauberg appears and claims that Velma has been possessed by the ghost of Wanda Grubwort. According to her, this happened because the girl touched one of the fragments of the moonstone. In doing so, her mind was dominated by the witch's spirit, which forced her to gather all the crystals to form a new staff. Now that she has regained her powers, Wanda Grubwort will finally be able to pursue her revenge, unless Velma's friends are able to stop her. To find their friend, the team must dive into the ocean and find the entrance to the cave, which serves as the witch's hiding place. Determined to help these young people stop her ancestor, Mrs. Trauberg lends them some diving suits and the group manages to find the cave. Following Scooby's sense of smell, the young people quickly find Velma and discover that Wanda is planning to create new minions to help her complete her revenge plan. The woman plans to attack all the townspeople with those creatures and make them pay for burning her at the stake hundreds of years ago. Not knowing what to do to help the girl free herself from the entity's influence, Shaggy reveals himself and tries to get in touch with Velma, but the young girl is no longer conscious as her mind has been taken over by the witch. Being chased by the giant toad, the group has no choice but to flee the cave, but Shaggy decides to hide and stays behind in order to help Velma and regain control of her body. At first, his plan seems to be working, but Wanda soon takes charge again and attacks the young man with the power of the crystals. Meanwhile, the rest of the team run towards the lake and Fred knocks down some rocks to obstruct the passage. As a result, the frogs can't get through and are trapped on the other side of the rubble. During their escape, the couple realizes that they have been trapped in a corridor without exits and begin to believe that they won't make it out of the cave alive. Now that they're trapped, they decide to apologize for trying to make each other jealous and decide to make up. However, the conversation is interrupted when giant frogs appear and manage to surround the couple. After being attacked by Wanda, Shaggy starts singing Velma's favorite song in the hope of helping her regain consciousness. At that moment, his friend begins to sing along with him and breaks the witch's staff in half, causing the woman's ghost to leave her body. However, now that Wanda's spirit is stronger, she manages to draw the crystals towards her and is about to take possession of the moonstones when Scooby appears and steals one of the halves of the staff. The dog then throws the object to the bottom of the lake and the witch's ghost disappears. Just then, Fred and Daphne are about to be attacked by the giant amphibians and they hug each other. However, before the frogs could hurt them, they returned to their original size and became harmless. Happy to have been saved by her friend, Velma realizes that she also has romantic feelings for Shaggy and decides to kiss him. However, after the kiss, they both realize that there was no chemistry between them and come to the conclusion that it's better to remain just friends. Upon hearing this, Fred and Daphne also think it best to do the same and decide to break up once and for all. In gratitude for the help given by Daphne and her friends, Thorny decides to present them with a check for $10,000. If it weren't for those youngsters, his club would be bankrupt, so the man goes to great lengths to show his gratitude. Seeing his four friends celebrating their victory and solving yet another mystery, Scooby feels excluded, as if he doesn't belong. While walking alone in the club, the dog has an accident and ends up falling from the second-floor balcony, but is saved by Shaggy. At that moment, Scooby-Doo realizes that he is not alone, because he knows that whatever happens, his best friend will always be there to support him. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.